Take it away. Ba-da-da-da.
Ba-da-da-da. Okay, I'm done.
Welcome, Spartans 2 Podcast of all of your favorite Halo podcasts, part of the Rated M Gaming Network. I'm your host, Drew, and with me today, as always, is David.
Hey, everybody.
Krysta.
Evolved.
And then this guy we found on the street.
It's been a rough day.
We are joined by a very special guest, Matt Forbeck. What's up, Matt?
Not too much. It's a bright and sunny, shiny Sunday morning here in Wisconsin. I'm happy to talk to you.
Ah, sweet. Well, thanks for joining us. We're really excited to talk to you about your latest book, Halo New Blood.
Yeah, I'm excited
And
about
we're going to be talking about all kinds of Halo stuff. So why don't we just start it off right away with Prepare to Drop.
Hang on to your helmet.
So, Matt, with Prepare to Drop, what we do is we talk about anything we did recently Halo-related. But if you haven't done anything Halo-related in like the past week or so, since you've never been on the show, you can maybe just talk about something you've done aside from writing a book, maybe.
I was writing a book with 343. That's not a big deal.
You might have heard about it.
There's things I can't tell you yet. So
if you want to talk about the next book, that's okay.
Well, what have you been up to recently? Like, have you been listening to some Halo music, or did you read any of the Halo comics recently?
Yeah, I did read the Halo comics. I've actually just started trying to play Spartan Strike. Right?
How's that going?
I haven't actually gotten to it. I'm like, I'm going to buy it, and then as soon as I have some time, I will get to it. Which I never have time. So,
where are you going to play it, Matt?
Well, that's a good question. Probably on an iPad that we have here. So
yeah,
we have an iPad and a couple iPhones lying around, and an iPod that's seems like 30 years old at this point, but it can't possibly be. So I'll probably end up playing on that. We had a Windows phone around here at one point too, so maybe we'll see if we can resuscitate that yet again. I do game development as well, so we have like just about every platform in the house. Right?
Oh, okay.
And if I need to play it on something, then I just move over to that.
Nice. So what did you think of the comics?
The comics have been great so far. I mean, they're really a great source of inspiration for the stuff I've been writing, for one. And, I'm a big fan of comic books. I also wrote the Marvel Encyclopedia for 2009 and 2014. And I'm working on some more stuff in the line now. I just had a little book for young readers come out called The Battle Against Ultron, which is out in time for the film, of course.
Oh, nice.
And this is based upon the comic book characters, not the film characters. But still, it gives kids an idea about how they can learn about those characters and then maybe read the comic books as well after that.
I might need to pick that up.
This one's it's a little thin one just for kids, but it's it's like $5 in the soft cover or something. But then the Marvel Encyclopedia, which is this massive book, right? That actually was on the New York Times bestseller list for like 4 out of the last 5 months, right?
Dude, that's awesome.
Which is cool. I don't blame myself for that at all. My job was just to not fuck it up, right? And I try to not fuck it up spectacularly, and then it gets on the list, hopefully.
I mean, that's, in my opinion, if you're a writer that takes on a lot of like different licenses and stuff, the ability to not fuck something up must be just like at the top of your resume.
It is, because the fans know everything better than you do, right?
Yes.
I can only do so much research on one person, right?
We're fans. We're fans. We're hardcore lore fans and stuff. And even us, like even we are getting like just messages and corrections, and people will pop on like YouTube videos and stuff, be like, "Well,
no, I have stuff."
I can see your resume. I can see your resume. Matt Forbeck has not yet fucked anything up yet.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. If I could actually put that at the top of it, I'd be proud.
You could just have it as the heading is "Did not fuck up," and then bullets of like Halo, Marvel.
That's right. Today, yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have my own stuff I do too. The fans know it better than I do. I mean, I write my own series, and people know it because you forget stuff as you go along. You're like, oh yeah, I think I remember that. And they're like, no, what about this point? You're like, yeah, I got to come up with an explanation for that. But yeah, that's part of the fun.
You now know the life pain of Frank O'Connor.
Exactly.
Because he's been told like, oh, you forgot this thing for like 10 years now. I always like watching the Warcraft guys. Like I was watching this. They did Blizzard did like a 10-year anniversary thing, and they were doing a clip from a BlizzCon, and somebody stood up and said, you said this one thing in this one book, and then in this one game it was different, and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, his response, Chris Metzen's response was basically like, all right, well, thanks for bringing that to our attention. We'll fix that immediately.
What else
we'll just rewrite and remake the game.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much. So have you played anything recently?
What have I been playing lately? I've
besides
Halo and everything else, right? I played a lot of Halo, and not just for preparing for this book, but I've been playing it for years. The last big game I got into was Shadow of Mordor.
Nice. Good.
I played Black Flag before that quite a bit and had a great time.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else we got going. My kids play more games than I do these days, right? So I'm always like looking over their shoulders and seeing what they're doing. But those have been the two big ones that actually suck me in. Usually I'll play a game for one session. I'll sit down for a couple hours, and if it doesn't grab me, then I'll move on to the next thing. But those two games actually grab me good. I am a big story guy. No surprise there, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I'm a story guy who likes his stories embedded in the game. I don't like it where it's kind of just
Grimrock
told to me. Right? Or, like, for instance,
Destiny.
I'm not a big fan of computerized role-playing games in a lot of cases because a lot of it's dialogue trees and all this kind of stuff. And I'd rather just play the game and have that be something that just naturally comes out at me as opposed to something where I have to go through a wheel or whatever and pick out every bit of dialogue.
Like environmental storytelling.
Exactly.
Or
like Portal, for instance,
all
is a fantastic
of the BioWare
example.
games.
Portal, very, very good example.
Portal is a game that just has everything through it. It's fantastic.
That's a good example as a writer. I'm sure you appreciate Portal because they have so much control over the narrative throughout that game. Like you're not. There's little moments as a gamer that you get to go like, oh, she remarked on this thing that I did. And like gamers love that. But as a writer, that's just like fun little side things. But you get to tell the story of these characters.
Well, I think in a game you have to be able to understand the player is the one who's the center of the story, right? So you have to actually engineer the story around them. It's a very different type of storytelling. A game that really did a great job of it was The Walking Dead by Telltale, right? They did a fantastic job of making it look like you had total player agency all throughout the whole thing. Like everything you did mattered. But in fact, for instance, you let one guy, if you had a situation where you either had to let a guy die or you could save him, no matter what you did, that guy would die within about 10 minutes. Right? You would just have that really, it's like, I saved the guy. And of course he's got to die because in the other branch of the story, he does die. And it has to unite somewhere later on, right? But it makes you feel like you actually had that choice that it meant something to you. And there's a little bits where it says like, Kenny will remember you said that, and it make you feel like you just have such agency in the game. And it's really just a fantastic grand illusion. But hey, they do a great job of it.
That must be difficult to do, I imagine.
It is difficult to do. It's very challenging. But
it's totally easy.
It's very writing a novel is comparatively simple, right? Because you have one through line and you know exactly what's going to happen, and you can just lead people along. But when you're writing something interactive like that, you have to make sure that the player feels like they're the one in control, that they're the one that matters, and that their choices matter. And that's always a difficult and challenging situation, especially because this is such a new genre or a new category for us to be working in.
Yeah, it's still. Video games, and especially storytelling in video games, is very, very young. I mean, if you think back to early video games, they were trying to tell a story, but they were trying to tell a story with such rudimentary tools.
Yeah, they were clumsy, but that's what you expect when you start out. I'm sure the first novels were very clumsy, too. I mean, if you read Don Quixote, which is one of the first novels, I read it in the translation. The translator said, no novel ever repaid more judicious skipping than this one, right? Just skip large sections of it. He pointed out, you don't need to read this, you don't need to read this. Because you're just fumbling your way along as you go when you're working in a new media like that.
I want to read that version of Lord of the Rings because I'm not really interested in learning about everyone's cousins, brothers.
That is
thing.
blasphemy.
No, read the first chapter of the Fellowship of the Ring.
Dare you?
Dude, I read them every year.
All right, so let's move along.
Okay.
Krysta, what have you been up to this week?
I've been playing the game where they have to.
Halo.
There's
Halo.
the evil ring. It's the one with the
Halo.
evil ring, and they got to go destroy the evil ring, and yeah.
South Park.
Yeah. No. I played a little Halo 2 Anniversary on Legendary because I'm doing a Legendary solo run of that. But then, other than that, I've been playing Dragon Age Inquisition.
Oh God.
Also, of course, I've been reading New Blood religiously.
Of course.
All right, David, what you been up to this week, man?
Put you all to shame. on it, but
No,
Halo
I'm
podcast.
gonna put everybody to
You're all
shame.
rubbish. I've done shit tons this week. I started, finished most of the playlists, and I started doing the kind of difficulty based ones. So I ran through.
So, have you done the Flood yet?
Yes.
On
Do you want to
Legendary?
talk about it?
No, I don't want to talk about it. It's a dark
Did
time in
you
my
use
life.
original
Drew.
graphics?
I just
That's
ran. I
really
just sped around it. Didn't shoot anybody.
How much
just ran.
drugs have you done since doing that?
Hey, those are
Wait till you
legitimately
do
good
Cortana.
levels. Yeah, I ran through it.
Ugh.
You can get through Cortana very quickly. You'd be surprised when you do nothing in that level.
If you actually know the
Yeah.
map, you can do it. But the map is so complicated.
I found
Yeah.
my most recent playthrough, like, I had a revelation when I was playing through, when I started the play of all of them, just to do all the campaigns, like the second half of Combat Evolved Anniversary, I just ran. I just ran past everything. And then I tried that in like all of the Arbiter missions. I would just run
You
past
can do that
everything.
too, yeah.
That's
Yeah, especially when you're invisible.
Oh yeah.
You're not doing it right, Drew.
So,
Drew, you're doing Halo wrong.
Yeah.
So what's your next playlist that you're going to be doing?
I'm starting on the only ones that I have remaining are the lassos and the difficulty ones. So
Hey, David,
I've
you want
started.
to do a
I knew.
lasso?
I'll think about it. I need some time alone.
Don't
Krista.
do it, man. Don't do it.
Get some therapy first.
Yeah. So I've started like Halo C on easy, and I'm just speedrunning that. I'm running through it, and then I'll work my way up through the difficulties of all the games.
Wait. Didn't we just talk about this last weekend?
No.
Yeah, because you were saying that you didn't know that if you did,
Oh, no,
like
that's
say you play
achievements.
Combat Evolved,
This is
Yeah.
for the playlist. You have to complete all the playlists, and there's an easy
they have
playlist.
playlists for each
Yeah, for each difficulty.
Oh god,
It's not like if
dude.
you run through the legendary one, you'll get the tick
Yeah.
for all the previous playlists. Doesn't
Yeah,
work like
yeah.
that.
Also, you have to
through
play
them.
through Lasso
That's
of each
brutal.
campaign twice to do all the playlists.
Oh god.
So that'll
Because
be
you
a
have to
later
do
date.
the Master Chief, like all of them at once, and then you have to do all of them individually.
So I'm doing the campaigns individually on Heroic, and then I have to go back and do the Master Chief journey. But beside that, like the playlists are just fun for me. I don't have this completionist mentality of Halo like you do, David.
achievements.
Yeah, you have like a neurological problem.
I need that. I need that score, man. I need to see that score going up. I've slowly been ranking back up through the table. I've been watching myself. I'm in retirement, by the way, Matt. I used to be pretty mad after achievements, and
And then
Yeah,
he
he
reached
hit-
like 1,000,000.
He hit 100,000.
No, I hit 100,000
No,
and kind of
he hit
retired.
100,000, and then we like celebrated, and then we told him to sit down.
This is an intervention. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
but it was kind of funny
Just
because
have a seat.
when
Just
they
have a
brought
seat.
in the Xbox One and it actually stacks you against your friends on your score and your achievements, I started getting messages then like, "What are you doing? You're doing nothing. You're playing games all the time. Stop it." So that was kind of fun. That's when you knew I have a
David,
problem.
honey, this is your mother. I made an
Yeah.
Xbox account just so I can talk to you. We're concerned.
That'd be awful trying to get my mother on Xbox.
And then you get like a therapist that only talks to you over Xbox.
You get a party invite.
That's
This-
what you guys
this sounds
are.
like This sounds like a movie.
Yeah.
Like some guy just lives in his Xbox.
When I make it big time, Drew, we'll probably make a movie about it.
All right, good.
So I am. There was a
So I already have the rights to your story, is what you're saying?
Of course, my story is your story, Drew.
I like it.
And there's I picked up. There was a 4-day sale on Dark Horse, which was excellent. So I picked up all the Escalation comics for $1,
Yes.
like $1 each, which was fantastic.
No one told me about this.
Oh man, you know what I just forgot? No one told you about this. Shut up. We posted in the Facebook group.
Is it still going on?
I
No.
don't.
I don't
Is
know.
it not?
Well,
Bollocks.
it was 4 days from Thursday. Maybe was it Thursday or Wednesday when I posted? I can't remember.
4
Well,
days from Thursday.
I think
What
so.
I was wondering was Initiation on sale also? Because I should have gone back and picked
It was
that up.
every comic on there that they have for sale. All of them. All of them
God.
are on sale. So,
But it's all the digital comics, Krista. Which
Yeah.
Oh, I want
you
the
get all
physical.
you get all butthurt about
Yeah.
digital things.
So I haven't read them all yet, but I picked them
I
all
was
up.
so mad that New Blood wasn't physical.
Oh man, it took
I
us
gotta
so
read it
long
on
to
my
tell her to
iPad.
bloody read it.
No, that's great though, because I mean, so we'll talk more about that later. But I love that because I think it's making it easier for them to do deals and get things out there, right?
Yes.
Just digital distribution is so fluid, and it makes it the barrier to entry for anybody to be. Matt, do you know who Dan Reichert is?
I know the name. I don't know why.
So he was, you probably know him because he was a longtime senior editor over at Game Informer.
Okay, gotcha.
And now he's at Giant Bomb.
Okay.
And he is just a ridiculous caricature of a person.
Okay.
He wrote a book called Air Force Gator.
Okay.
He's written a few Air Force Gator books. I don't know what that's about, but it's an alligator in the Air Force. At the very least, that's what it's about.
Okay. That's not how I know him, but okay.
But he wrote a self-help book, and it's like the #1 self-help book on Amazon now.
No way, really?
And he just did it out of nowhere.
Good for him. That's awesome.
And it's so ridiculous. It's so cool to just see digitally like how fast things can just travel, and you get the word out there to everybody. You don't have to worry about printing and all that stuff.
Oh, it's amazing.
So anyways, you picked up all of Escalation. Are you caught up now?
No,
David?
I haven't even read them yet.
What are you doing?
They're
really short.
Unlike you, Drew, I've been reading New Blood again to get ready for the show. Yeah, back in your box.
Good man.
See, Drew, you're the one who came up with this idea.
They're just pictures.
And you tell us to do it, and we all do it. We sit and we bust our asses
fully self-aware.
reading. And then you're like, "Oh, I only got to chapter 4."
Yeah, I'm an idiot. I know. I'm the idea man. I'm not really the doer. I'm just like, hey, this would be a good idea, guys. All right, we're doing this. Great. All right. Well, I didn't do that.
You can see the relationship in their dynamics. I know.
Be ready for an interview.
I'm the typical manager.
Delegation.
Hey guys, here's what we're gonna do. Okay, well you guys go do that.
That's right. Are you done with that yet?
I'm gonna sit here and read Escalation.
Yeah, I know. I got something else coming. You guys ready?
Other than that, then, I finally picked up Halo the graphic novel. The original.
I saw that. I saw that post.
So that was awesome. I went to my first Comic-Con at the weekend yesterday. It was a really small thing in the shopping center. It was really cool, but they had like 2 big, massive boxes of comics. I was just flicking my way through, saw Halo, and I was like, I didn't even think to look that there would be something here. Just bought it straight away.
I just picture David like discovering Halo and then looking around like, does anybody know this is here?
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm getting this. I'm taking this now.
It was awesome.
So you've looked through it already?
No.
Oh, okay.
Not
I was
yet.
going to say, so I was curious what you know of the Halo graphic novel, because it's not a traditional linear story.
I opened it up and I just saw that it's actually short stories, or there's like 4 or 5 stories in there, and I knew that much about it, but I actually don't know what happens in any of them. Other than the fact, I think Ben Giroud from Hunt the Truth is actually in them. Someone told me that during the week.
I highly doubt that.
He is, yeah. He's mentioned in one of the stories.
Are you serious?
Yeah, 100%.
What?
Chris and Tim were talking about it in the Facebook group during the week.
Interesting.
It's actually, I think it's actually where the picture came from of Master Chief with the 2 SMGs. Do you know that they photoshopped? I think the story is about him taking that picture.
Halo 2?
Yeah, in Halo 2, the promotional material.
I see. Okay.
I think that's where it came from.
Interesting. Yeah, I wondered if they just pulled... See, they seem to be doing this right now. They're like mining their own history to pull seeds that were planted, even if they were on accident, and kind of make them relevant in canon now. Like Ellie from Starry Night and Ellie. God damn it. Is it Ellie?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I said Ellie, and then I was like, wait, am I thinking The Last of Us already? But just stuff like that, just things that we didn't even think about, or they didn't even think about when it happened, and they're going back and instead of creating a bunch of new stuff, they're also just saying like, hey, this is still relevant. Like, here's June and stuff like that. All right, well, let's see. What did I do? Played some Halo. Nothing crazy. I'm still working on Halo 4. I have forgotten how like torturous that campaign gets later on. Like, about halfway through the story structure, the story's great, but the mission structure, like what you have to do, go here. All right, now go left. Now push the button. All right, now go to the other side and push the button. All right, go to the next room. Oh, hey, look, there's 2 buttons. We need to go to either side of the room and push the buttons. And
Button simulator.
Yeah. And I get that that's like a challenge for shooters, and I think that they're just trying to push the narrative of that game, and it wasn't really as important to them to make. I mean, if you look at some of the set pieces of Halo 3, like Halo 4 doesn't come anywhere near that. And I think that's because it was a focus on a really tight story. But I'm doing that. And then I I visited the Podtacular guys this week, and we dove way into Hunt the Truth. We talked about Hunt the Truth for like 2 hours. I highly recommend anybody going to listen to that episode. I had a lot of fun. I was really excited to just talk about like the episode, but we got way off on like ideas and thoughts about what this means for Halo 5. We even talked about things that I think we're going to answer here today, because I asked if we knew much about the Spartan 4 training. And I was like, I haven't finished New Blood yet, but I got to imagine that we talk about how he becomes a Spartan 4 a little bit. And I was saying that up until this point, we don't know how Spartans become Spartan 4s, like what that process is like. And we were talking about Locke and how he was an Oni agent and now he's a Spartan 4. And like, is he just an honorary Spartan 4? Is his whole mission, like I was saying, I think that Locke is a Spartan 4 just because he's been identified to be the guy to go hunt down Master Chief. Like, I don't think he's been a Spartan running around doing missions and stuff, up until Halo 5. I think he's a Spartan to find Chief.
Technically, Spartans are like separated now from Oni.
Well, Spartans are their own unit.
Yeah, so it seems kind of unusual that Oni would get their own Spartan, but I suppose that's what they wanted.
No, I don't mean like an Oni Spartan.
Do you not think
I just mean like I think he was pulled into the Spartan program to get the tools and resources available to him to hunt down the Chief. Like, you're not going to send an Oni agent after the Chief. You have to send a Spartan to get a Spartan. You're not going to send anybody else. So I feel like instead of him being like, hey, you're a Spartan now, go with Crimson Team to find this thing and blah, blah, blah. And then after a couple of years be like, okay, wait a minute. Now you got to go find Chief. So I think they made him a Spartan 4 specifically to go hunt Chief. We'll see. But that was fun. Caught up on Escalation because episode. God damn it! Look what you did to me, David.
No. David calls them episodes instead of issues, and now it's just infecting everyone else.
What happened, Matt, is that one time I got confused, and they just took the piss out of me, so now I just do it all the time just to wreck their heads. So every time this happens, it's like, just makes me feel so happy inside.
It's come back around on them now. I see that, yes.
Issue 17. And it is a new arc. It's a new story arc, and it's really singular. Like, it's not a lot happens in it, but somebody posted a thing saying like,
"Hey, Drew, your thing's cutting out."
Oh, really? Well, I sound good on my end though, because it's recording locally, so should be okay, right? Am I still here?
Kind of.
Your audio went down like a million times.
Like a million?
Yeah, like a million.
All right, well, I'm going to click off my video just to kind of save some bandwidth and see what happens.
Cut this out. Cut this all out.
We're not going to cut this out. But anyways, I like that this feels like the beginning of the end of Escalation, because this issue really felt like a setup. But why don't we move on, and we'll talk about some news next.
Could we possibly make any more noise? I guess so.
Okay, one of the most important things is happening right now, which is that ODST will be out next month. Yay, everybody! Get some ODST, which is perfect timing. For having Matt on the show, we can talk about ODSTs. So Matt, I imagine you're excited for this as well.
Yeah, I love ODST. That was one of my favorite installments of the entire thing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
It's so good. So good. Really excited for that. I'm sure everyone is as well.
Have we seen like a trailer or anything?
No, we got some more pictures in the Master Chief update that was released on Waypoint. So it was just another 2 images. Like, there wasn't a whole lot to it. It's just of all the squad lined up, and I think there was a picture of the city somewhere. I can't remember what it was.
How's it look?
It looks beautiful. It looks really good. Yeah, there are 2 wallpapers that they have in the update for people, and they released 2 more pictures of they're remaking the map Relic.
Right.
From that as well. So they just showed 2 more pictures from that as well. So that's all coming in May.
Halo 3 was a fantastic portion of the Master Chief Collection, and so I'm really excited to see how ODST performs, just like technically.
I don't think Halo 3 is working anyway. Like, the co-op is not working on Halo 3 still, probably. So...
No, but I'm saying, like, the performance of it, just playing a single player by yourself, it does look amazing, and I'm excited to see, like, what they do with ODST as far as the 1080p 60 frames and, like, the big, vast open areas that you get to roll through. I think it's the first mission, right, with Dutch?
The Nature Preserve?
The first flashback? Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to see that.
No, that's the second one. The first one is with when you're finding Dare, and then the second one is the zoo.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, yeah.
The zoo.
The zoo.
I want to see the zoo.
The zoo. We're going to the zoo.
So, hopefully that'll come out and be flawless, because I can't wait to play that game. I've been holding off playing it for the last couple of months.
Flawless victory.
Exactly. We should probably talk about the Halo 5 lock TV ad, which was incredible.
14 grenades. Yeah. Come on. He has a bag of holding that he just keeps all of his grenades.
Matt, did you see this trailer?
No, I'm not seeing it yet. I gotta look it up.
Oh man, you should see this thing. It's Locke just going ape shit. Like
he's
running
a fighter
around. Jet. He's like doing Spartan slams like through buildings. I'm not making that up. Like he crashes from one building through the building to the ground.
He like
think the end of Man of Steel.
Nice.
Yeah. He's just like he's basically Man of Steel, because he's like destroying this place. And you know what? I feel like that's the location that they're in, that's like just rubble afterwards. I don't know. What do you think?
That's a whole I don't think there's enough rubble left on that planet for like the amount of buildings they had in the trailer. That planet must be completely flattened if that's what they did. But I loved when he just kicked the Banshee out of the air. And man. How do you do that? That's ridiculous.
Shit is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, the ad is for pre-ordering at GameStop, which I heard this isn't a GameStop exclusive.
Yeah, I was going to mention that later on. It's in the Cannon Fodder update. It just says if you pre-order. There's actually no mention of GameStop in the Cannon Fodder.
Oh,
so as far as I know, it's
GameStop just got a nice fancy trailer.
Yes, they do.
Totally over exaggerated.
That trailer is bananas.
But it's not canon.
I remember waking up and reading the conversation between all of you in the Podcast Evolved chat, and I just saw Krysta go like, "It's canon now. Locke is a jet fighter, or like a fighter
jet."
Like he like legit flies.
Boosting around the whole town.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
that's insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right, so what else we got?
There's a Halo Archive app announced, which is kind of pretty exciting for the guys over there. I'm sure they can't wait to get that up and running. So I think it's not available yet, but I just seen they were promoting the fact that they're doing it and they're getting it out. So thanks for Chris for giving that a shout out for that. We did a Spartan Strike giveaway on Twitter. That was yourself, Drew.
We did.
I just want to give a shout out to Cryvent. I think I can't if I said that right. Who won Spartan Strike.
Yeah, it's like Cryvent or Crevent or something like that. Great artist.
Yeah, I saw some of his work. It was really cool.
Yeah. Let's see what else we got here.
We
talked about the Dark Horse sale. Yeah.
I was just saw this today when I was messing around on Waypoint. You can pre-order Hunters in the Dark, which is the next Halo novel out by Peter David. And that's out the 16th of June. It's the one with dinosaurs. It takes place on the Ark.
I was when I was on Podtacular, I made a joke about that, and they didn't know about it. Like they didn't see
the blind wolves.
They didn't look at the cover.
Yeah, they didn't know about the blind wolves. Well, I think they saw it, but they didn't really
just saw the art.
They didn't read into it. Yeah,
they're like armless velociraptors.
And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like this is 343's thing right now. Is they're mining like the history of Halo and being like, hey, what's some random...
That's as old as you can get, though.
Yeah. What's some random thing that no one's ever talked about? Or, like, we've never seen again? So I'm really hopeful that the ODST amphibious vehicle that we talked about in our ODST month makes a way into one of the future games.
Please, no.
Like Halo Wars 2 or something.
The little boat that the ODSTs are on?
Yeah. It'd be funny if it's like a random event where... you call in ODSTs, and then these ODSTs land with this amphibious boat, and they just kick it and run away from it. Like, what are we going to do with this thing? All right, so is that a digital pre-order? Or is that
is not. No, that's an actual novel.
There's a digital and a physical.
There is a digital. There is a digital version of it, but there's also a physical book coming out.
So you're telling me I have until June. That's not nice. I have until June 16th to finish reading New Blood like a scrub. All right, got it.
We can all pretend that you're going to do that, Drew, but we all know you're not going to. So
no.
I still need to finish the Kilo 5 trilogy.
So do I. It's okay. I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
It's okay. We'll worry about that when we get Karen Travis on the show, Drew. So.
She'll tear you apart.
She would too. I bet. Yeah.
She's a great lady. Tough lady. But she's a great
Have you
lady.
met her?
Yeah.
Yeah, I met her at Comic-Con several years ago. Wonderful person.
Yeah.
We're part of this group that there's a International Association of Media Tie-In Writers. And so we give out awards at Comic-Con, things like that. And she used to be very active on the mailing list. I don't think I've seen her on there for quite some time because she's been doing stuff like different video games that she's working on instead.
Mm-hmm.
But she's a great lady, very funny, very intelligent, very sharp.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's cool.
Her books are awesome. I
didn't realize that was a thing, like that organization.
Yeah,
makes sense.
It was, I think Lee Goldberg and Max Allen Collins started it up about 7 or 8 years ago, something like that. And the only time we ever meet other than that online through the mailing list is at Comic-Con, which I haven't been to in about 5 years. It's just got kind of crazy out there. I love Comic-Con. I've been about 8 different times since '92.
Wow. Oh, I'm so jealous.
Is that the big the San Diego one?
Yes, that's the one in San Diego. 125, 150,000 people show up. It's hard to get a hotel room within an hour's drive of the place. It's just insane. It's a lot of fun, but small doses.
I've never been to a con, like ever. Never been to any kind of con.
Yeah.
And I'm going to RTX this summer. That'll be my first one. So cool. I'm really excited for that.
My favorite is Gen Con, which is a big tabletop gaming convention. But they also have a writer's track there, which is fantastic. And I've been this will be my 34th Gen Con in a row. I started going when I was a kid. Right? Really
Holy crap, man!
Yeah, and
do you have a parking spot?
Actually, I'm on the committee that selects the guests of honor for the gaming track. So I do both the gaming track and the writer's track because I started out as a tabletop game designer for many years.
Wow!
Do Wizards of the Coast show up?
Yeah, they do actually. Of course, they do.
Are they actually wizards?
No. Well, they're
not
pretty sharp guys.
They
don't always have a booth these days. Often they just have a section of the hall just dedicated to playing D&D and to playing Magic, but they don't actually have their own booth these days. They let other people sell their stuff, which is because they're owned by Hasbro. Hasbro doesn't like to sell direct to consumers. They like to let other people do that. They're retail partners, so to speak.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, all the game shops everywhere.
While we're on games and tabletop games, and I have you here, have you seen the new Halo tabletop game?
Yeah, doesn't that look cool?
Yeah, what do you think of that?
Tabletop miniatures game coming out with ship-to-ship combat? Sign me up, man.
Yeah.
One of the first things I did way back when was a game called Silent Death, which was a ship-to-ship combat game with little metal miniatures for Iron Crown Enterprises. And it was originally developed by Kevin Barrett, who went on to be one of the head writers for BioWare for many years, right? And just a great little game. And I'm really excited to see what they do with this one. I'm a big fan of tabletop stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
Nice.
Yeah, it does sound really good. Okay, a quick shout out to a trailer that I think people should definitely watch. There was the Dawn of Justice mashup trailer that Jeff tweeted to us, as well as it mashes up the 2 trailers of the Halo 5 teasers of Locke and John, as well with the Dawn of Justice kind of audio track overlaid on it. It's really, really cool. It actually matches up so well and has the same kind of tone of like
the Do You Bleed thing is
the
really
Do You Bleed
cool.
thing. Yeah, it's very, very cool. It's worth a quick look. There was a few teaser pics put out during the week, and we don't actually know what they're for.
Yeah, what is this?
They're very unusual. They're like a Spartan's
this
foot.
This is stuff that Chris found?
And then like the background of like just a load of bubbles, and looks no one knows really, and it's embedded in that is another picture linked to another site, and it's very obscure. No one really knows what's going on yet, but they're just random pictures that people are trying to put together. So they reckon
343 is just trolling again.
Probably. Okay, but the beauty of it is that I don't do any of this stuff. Chris does it all for us. So keep doing that, Chris. You figure out those puzzles.
Shout outs to Chris for sure.
Because I hate Halo puzzles. They're the worst kind. Just tell me the information. Stop hiding it from me. Just tell me.
Dear Bungie, I'm really sick of your Halo puzzle.
Dear Bungie.
Your
new game Destiny has the worst Halo puzzles.
I still can't find Master Chief. Where is he? There was an MCC update for April, which is out now. Everybody probably has it by now. It's got a whole bunch of different fixes for party, matchmaking, rosters, all that kind of stuff.
Lots of stuff.
I will put a quick shout out to people who play with Boxer for Halo CE. They've actually switched the grenade and throw grenade buttons, so just be careful. Two of those things are after being switching around. Halo 3 Forge includes editing for all game types. There is a couple of things on betrayal. So quitting is defined as anything that kicks you out of a match. So you'll get your rank will be impacted and all that kind of stuff. So just be aware of that.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. So we'll jump down to Hunt the Truth. I say, Matt, have you been following these little podcasts that come out every week? It's like
no, I haven't.
Tumblr. Okay, there's some spoilery stuff in here, so for you.
You'll like it.
You'll like it.
When you
It's
do
really
get a
good.
chance to listen to it, you're gonna love it, dude.
After
Yeah.
you listen to all the podcast evolves, then you can.
Right. You only have about 40 episodes to go back and listen to, and then you can listen to.
That'll
Hunt the
only
Truth.
take you a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And then by then, a ton of issues of Hunt the Truth will be out.
No,
It'll be great.
the problem for me, and I
They're
love
episodes.
podcasts, but I just don't get to listen to them that often because my commute is literally from one room of my house to another. Right? So
This is
not
true.
Not like I'm sitting there in a car
Just
or on a
walk
train saying,
really
"Okay."
slowly.
Exactly.
I used to commute an hour and a half to and from work every day.
Wow.
When I first really got into podcasting, and I was also listening to podcasts doing like I got hurt in the Army, and so I was wasn't able to go out and run with everybody, so I was on an elliptical. And I remember when I very first really got into podcasts, I was falling off of my elliptical, laughing my ass off to the Rooster Teeth podcasts. And then I got into listening to these podcasts on this long commute, and then I moved to a job where I could work from home sometimes, and I was like, this totally destroys my podcasting
Exactly.
listening. I'd never have time to listen now.
No, the part because you can't listen to a podcast and write at the same time, right? Because the
Oh,
words
no.
come
Yeah,
in,
you can't-
and the
yeah,
words
you can't
you're generating words at the same time. It just
Yeah.
doesn't work. It hits the
I
same
thought
center
some
of
of
your
those
brain.
chapters were weird.
Oh, they're all weird.
And
That's okay.
That's why Buck goes off on these tangents,
No, it
just
was
whatever you
great.
were listening to at
And
the
then,
time.
and then
Just typed
Buck
in.
turns to Gus and says, "It's Tuesday," and you're like, "What?"
And Gus yells at Bernie. Rooster Teeth podcast.
So Hunt the Truth is. Do you know who Key and Peele are?
Yeah.
The comedians.
Hilarious.
So Key plays a journalist named Ben Giraud, Giraud,
Okay.
and he's basically been tasked to find out what he's been tasked to write the story of the Master Chief. So he's been given all these
By Oni, by the way.
Right, yeah.
He's been given all these contacts to go contact. And he's starts off, oh, there's this great story, this kid, and he's strong, and he's an inspirational leader and stuff like that. But every time he talks to someone else that Oni hasn't handed him, they start saying, no, that's not how that happened. And this is, his parents are still alive, and he's dead, and just all this stuff. And it's gotten really cool.
Yeah, we're in the 4th episode now, and just the whole story is broken apart, where he realized now that Oni lied, and that there's everything is wrong. Yeah,
And also he's about to get his ass kicked by it. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
because
great.
he basically all right. So this episode, right? First of all, my favorite part is that he talks to Robin Sparkles.
yeah, that's hilarious.
I am a massive How I Met Your Mother fan.
Yeah.
And soon as I heard Robin's voice, Robin Scherbatsky, who's also
In the
I don't remember
Avengers.
her character's name.
She's
but
Maria Hill in the Avengers, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. So, when she
Smulders,
comes
yeah.
on, yes, Kobe Smulders, yeah, she comes on, and I just lost it. I was like, oh my god, that's her. She started making hockey references. She said something. There was a couple things she was talking about. Drinks and stuff. She basically was Robin Scherbatsky.
That's
Her
hilarious.
last name, it's Petra. Her name's Petra. Something that sounds like it's Canadian.
Okay.
It's so funny, and she's a journalist. And Robin Scherbatsky
Exactly.
was a news anchor,
Yep.
and so that killed me. I loved it. But David, what'd you think about this one with him kind of going to Mashak and being like, "Hey, what's going on?"
I think it's starting to get really interesting now because he's going off the beaten track now. He's going finding his own information. But I do think it's really cool that because we know Petra from like other short stories, and she thinks she's in Escalation as well.
Yeah,
she's like a friend of Lasky. So she actually has been portrayed as quite a good journalist, like real investigative, real hands-on. And it's just great to see the contrast between Ben, who we've all been given out of the last 3 weeks of just being a crap and pure rubbish kind of journalist, and the way he goes about it and just like ringing up Oni and saying, "Oni, you're wrong." Do you know what I mean? You don't do that. Do you know what I mean?
Why would you do that?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny that she.
Sully, what's going on here?
I think it's hilarious that she calls him out on his shit and just like, quite frankly, you're not the person for the story. Like, you're not able for it. And he gets pissed off, but immediately realizes that she's right. So like he kind of backs up all his stuff and then goes for the meeting with Oni. It was really interesting. It was very good. I can't wait for next one tonight now.
It's cool having a character who's like your narrator, your protagonist and stuff, who is just totally out of his element. Yeah. Like, doesn't know what he's doing. He's not, and especially in the Halo universe. Like in Halo, I think with the exception of maybe like Yip Yap, which is my favorite person to like call back to, we haven't really had a lot of like protagonists that are just like bumbling idiots, like that just don't know.
Is Yip Yap is the one from
I think it was Contact Harvest.
Contact Harvest? Okay.
Yeah.
There's another one in The Flood that's really funny as well.
Yeah.
Now, normally you're super competent people, right? Your soldiers have been designed from 6 years old to be able to pull this shit off.
Exactly.
So it's very different to have somebody who's bumbling through. It's a good change of pace at the very least.
All the weak in that universe has been like weeded out, I'd say, over the course of the war. Like, you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. It's kind of hard to find somebody who's just kicking around, like,
You either got badasses or cowards, one or the other.
Covenant killed all the cowards, and some of the badasses.
Cowards hide.
They can hide well.
Cowards tend to find their ways up in the ranks. So, not speaking from experience, I swear. So, I love that we get a bit of a tease from Mashak here, where he's talking about EM fluctuations throughout the galaxy, and there's a lot of rumblings, and people are scared. Like, he's getting scared of something. When I was on Podtacular, we talked about like what we think that might be, and I wanted to throw their theory out to you guys.
Is it the Flood?
So
it's the Didact.
It is the Flood, according to them. They're talking about like
or the
ancient flood, not precursors, but like the
you just spoiled it all.
The flood that would like
spoilers.
Apparently that's been known to like bend time and space and stuff like that. Like flood that's so massive and powerful that it's like its own.
We are all the Flood. The universe is Flood.
No, just you.
So, just me? Okay.
So do you think it's the Flood, David, or do you want it to be something else?
I want it to be something
else. I really don't want it to be the Flood.
Oh yeah,
the Flood have to come after reading the Forerunner series. Though the Flood have to come back.
Yeah, they will be back, but I hope this isn't them. Like, I think they need a rest. I mean, I wouldn't, but at the same time, I'd take the Flood over the Prometheans if that's the way it's going to go. I got really bored of fighting them by the end of Halo 4. So
hey, I got pretty bored of fighting the Flood too.
You know what's really funny? You mentioned the Prometheans and fighting them and not really liking it. Their most recent IGN review conversation thing about Halo Spartan Strike, the reviewer, which wasn't Brian Albert, I don't remember. I think it's one of their new guys. Was saying that adding the Prometheans to the gameplay of Spartan Assault in Spartan Strike actually makes it feel refreshing. And he was saying it was like the best part of the game.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, well, interesting. And it was because you have to change your tactics with
we already know Prometheans are probably going to be in the next game because when we played the Halo 5 beta, there was a light rifle.
Right?
Yeah. But we knew story-wise that there's more composers and that there's more. Like, if you read up on Escalation, there's, like, an issue episode where they go to the composer Forge
There are
world.
Things and stuff and things.
Yeah.
And
many things and stuff.
I totally spoiled the shit out of Escalation on Podtacular.
Oh, really? I can't listen to it then.
Well, we were talking about stuff, and we were talking about, like, who's going to be in Halo 5 and what could happen and stuff. And
I'm really glad you told me that, because I was going to listen to that at some stage during the week. I know.
I spoiled stuff that you've already read.
Oh, that's okay.
Bio was like how, who could be with Locke and this and that, and who could be with Chief? Like, where could Chief go? If he's on the lam, where does he go? Who does he talk to? And I was like, well, he might not be by himself. And they were like, what? And I was like, well. And then I was like, okay, spoilers. I was like, all right, listen. But what I was curious about, I think we talked about this. I think we alluded to this last week. David, did we talk about whether or not we think Ben's going to be in Halo 5?
I don't think so. That could have been.
Or have we gotten onto the track of whether or not we think he's going to live through all of this?
Oh, he's definitely living through it, because he's talking to us in like the
also, there's 12 more episodes.
Yeah.
So he's talking. He is narrating this. He's narrating it as it goes. It's interesting, Matt. I think you'll appreciate the fact that you're listening to audio clips that he has recorded, like interviews that he had, and he'll pause the interview or he'll start narrating over the interview of like, you see, I thought that was funny because I was like,
that's super annoying, by the way, talking over yourself.
It's really meta and really weird, and it sounds good, but it also makes it feel, for better or for worse, much more like an audio drama than something that someone put together in real life and said, like, here's an interview that I did. You know what I mean? No one's going to go to that trouble. There's like too many moving parts.
Well,
like we had a hard enough time.
At some point in the future, they'll actually make that simple in software. Who knows?
But yeah, but he's still posting to Tumblr, though.
Tumblr survives? Holy shit.
Yeah, Tumblr survives 500 years.
It's amazing.
Spoilers.
Tumblr will never die.
Yeah. I wonder if Snapchat's still there. So, what I was gonna get to though is I think it's interesting that he backs. So, all right, I don't want to walk through the whole episode. Go listen to it, but at some point before he goes to talk to Oni, because he gets summoned from Oni.
He's gonna get kicked.
Before he goes to talk to Oni, he gets a tip from Petra saying, like, you should probably back up everything you have just in case. So he contacts a friend and sends him everything. So the theory is, what if he dies after, like, putting everything together and, like, getting it ready? He dies and his friend is uploading this instead.
But then you still have the narrations to explain. How is he narrating?
He has put everything together.
He's already
put all this together.
The narrations we hear were sent to his friend.
If that's the case, then we never hear from Ben again, because now he goes into Oni, he doesn't come back out. So
but see, I don't think this is the moment.
Okay.
Like, I would agree that he lives past this encounter, obviously, because it's only been a couple episodes. But just the question mark of, like, okay, does Ben survive this? And then what I was supposing is I would like to see, I can't remember if I said this last week or not. I would like to see Ben and Petra be, like, part of the Spielberg series. Like, I want to see I want to see the Halo universe through the eye of journalists who are trying to investigate and unravel what's really going on.
No, you said that last week. All right, yeah, that'd be cool.
And that,
another perspective on a soldier, like in the world.
Yeah, and especially after having Petra and Ben have this exchange, and then that was the thing. You have someone who's in all right. Colby Smulders was a co-star in one of the highest grossing films of all time. So you don't just grab someone like that and not have her and just have her
bored,
do
man.
the
She wasn't
voice.
doing anything. How Much Mother's over.
See, that's the thing.
Avengers
Like, I don't
over.
think she wasn't doing anything. I think I'm hoping that her and Key are going to be involved in the TV series, and this is setting up their characters.
That'd be cool.
I'm just I've got my fingers crossed for that, because I don't want these characters to not show up again, or to be relegated to like another comic or just a book.
Or even a fake book, as Krysta calls them.
We can real books. It's okay.
You know, the casting just seems deliberate. You know, just like Nathan Fillion, like, you don't just grab someone like that for no reason. You know, so I'm hoping that there's more to it here. All right, so why don't we move along?
Yeah. There's a new cannon fodder out, everybody. It's just called Taking Orders. It's a fairly short cannon fodder this week. It's just general housekeeping notices.
And Jeff still put a ton of puns in it.
Yeah, still a lot of puns in it. Just promoting Hunt the Truth and the Halo channel and stuff like that. There's a small interview with Samantha Rigor, hopefully I said that right, who's a writer-producer at 343. I think she's like Jeff's boss, possibly. But she kind of oversees. I don't know if you've had any doings with her, Matt, yourself, have you?
I've talked to most of the people at 343 in the management at one point or another, but
yeah,
I don't remember that one, to be honest with you. It's possible.
Her name is Samantha, spelled Symantha.
Yeah,
That's freaking rad.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Cool.
That's really cool.
Why is that cool?
I've never seen that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna change the spelling of my name to Dryew.
Room. It's like it's Welsh or something. It's weird.
And David, you could be Dahvid. David.
I like that.
That's a thing, I'm sure, somewhere.
It's like Dovahkiin.
Dovahkiin.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'll go with that.
What if we just call David Dovahkiin from now on?
Yep, Dovahkiin.
All right.
Matt's shaking his head. See, Matt, this is the kind of racist stuff I gotta put up with all the time.
Well, we never said that Dovahkiin was Irish. He's a Nord.
Yeah, he's not that Irish.
He's not that Irish. So that's
Right.
It's a pretty small, simple interview, but it's worth reading. People, go check it out.
Okay.
Cool, man. All right, well, why don't we launch into some Halo history and get this second half of the show going? Talk about some lore, bro.
This is going to be all about you now, Matt. You get your game face on.
Yikes!
Okay. This week, actually today, in Halo history, the 26th of April, in 2526, the Covenant attacked the Corbulo Military Academy on Cyrnus
Never heard of it.
4. Yes, you have, because it's where the Forward Unto Dawn takes place. And where Sully and
I actually
Lasky...
rewatched Forward Unto Dawn. That was actually another thing that I did over the last week.
Yeah.
And
Did you watch
wow,
them
it
through the
holds
Halo
up.
channel? Because it's
I have it
new
on,
up there now.
I have it. How did I watch it? I think Netflix.
Netflix?
Yeah, Netflix has it.
Oh, that's
I
cool.
think I watched it on Netflix. It really makes Nightfall look really bad.
It does.
Like I want
I
to go
know,
back
it's
and rewatch
sad.
Nightfall now. I might as well just pick it up at work and on Blu-ray, and then if I don't want to keep it, I can just give it away on the show or something. But I want to go back and watch Nightfall as
Yay,
a
Drew's
stitched
hand off,
together
everybody.
thing. Yeah, here's my hand-me-downs.
Just sign it.
Yeah, I'll sign. Yeah, remember we were saying that about the posters that we have.
That's pretty.
That we're gonna give away. So, like Forward Unto Dawn is so much better than I remember it being. Like I don't know why. I really liked it when it first came out, but especially
Oh man,
after
that
watching
Hunter
Nightfall,
fight is the best thing that ever happened.
and just the ships coming out of the sky and just
The troopers,
the sense of place. You really feel like you're on a foreign planet, even with the little bit of, I mean, just them like running down the trail and like some establishing shots and stuff like that. It's so well done. It's so well done. Like, man, shit's good.
Have you seen these two, Matt? The Nightfall and the Forward Unto Dawn.
I haven't had a chance to see Nightfall yet, but I did watch Forward Unto Dawn.
No.
It's good stuff.
Oh, Nightfall's great. You should totally watch it.
Yeah, it's on my list, honestly.
It's
I
like
have
the
more
best
research to
thing
do
I've
for the
ever
future,
seen.
so yes.
Oh,
you'll like it.
teasers!
You'll like it.
Oh.
You'll like it because it has at least a couple of like the best characters I've seen in a Halo story, but unfortunately those aren't the main characters. Well, they pretty much are though. That's the thing.
And
like,
as per usual Halo lore, they kill them off. So
Of course.
yeah, and then they die.
It's a clean ending. That's what we
Great
call
characters that die.
a clean ending.
it. That's right. That's my character. Nobody else gets to use. Kill them all.
Nice.
And then they say, "Oh, but what happened in
Then we
the
do
past?"
prequels.
And you go back.
No more fan fictions.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Halo historian David.
No problem. Thanks for remembering about it this week, Drew.
Oh.
Yeah, I just powered right through it last week. And then you were like, nope,
No,
don't forget.
call your shit out.
All right, well, why don't we launch in the dossier and learn a bit about Matt?
Hi, Matt.
Howdy.
Hey there.
That was so creepy,
So-
Krista.
So, Matt,
It was supposed to be.
who is your daddy and what does he do? No, who are you? Why are you here? And what is it that you do these days?
My name is Matt Forbeck. I started on tabletop game design way back in the day with TSR and Games Workshop and a bunch of other different companies. I ran a company called Pinnacle Entertainment Group, which actually had a TV show on the Xbox television channel before the television channel got canceled, based on Deadlands, which was a zombie role-playing game, zombie Wild West role-playing game that we developed back in the 90s.
Oh, hell yeah.
And after I got through doing all that stuff, I started writing novels. We moved back to Wisconsin. We were in Virginia at the time to have free babysitting for our children, which is a fantastic thing. Cannot be beat. And I started doing novels, computer games, comic books, toy design, all sorts of different stuff. We ended up having another 4 children at once. My wife had quadruplets 12 years ago. They're going to be 13.
Whoops.
Holy crap,
in
congratulations.
June. Yes.
You've got 4 13-year-olds?
Oh, they're 12 now. They'll be 13 in about June 5th. So yes.
All of them on June 5th?
It's like playing that's playing a lasso in Halo.
Exactly. So yeah, it's been a crazy time. But about the time that they were born, I started doing novels. So I wrote novels for Wizards of the Coast for Dungeons and Dragons. I did a YA series for Dungeons and Dragons called Secret of the Spirit Keeper was the first one. It was the Knights of the Silver Dragon series. I did novels for Eberron. I did novels for Blood Bowl, which is a tabletop game.
You did novels for Blood Bowl?
I did 4 novels for Blood Bowl, right?
That's
and 5
crazy.
comic books.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was kind of fun. Blood Bowl's a fantasy football game where the fantasy comes from elves, dwarves, orcs, goblins, vampires, whatever, beating the crap out of each other on the pitch and literally slaughtering each other. So, but it's hyper-violent jokes, so it's all guys doing like Killer Genuine Draft and Bloodweiser, other things that they drink, and it's just really stupid, funny, silly stuff.
I love that.
So I did that. I started writing nonfiction as well. I did the Marvel Encyclopedia in 2009 and 2014. Did some more Marvel stuff for DK Publishing, which did those books. I also did some toy design. I did amongst other things, did a Star Trek roleplay kit where they actually recorded 90 seconds of dialogue where the guy who does the voice for Starfleet Command sends you as Captain Kirk or as Mr. Spock out to do little adventures with a little...
Krista's head's exploding.
With a communicator and a phaser, right? They were activated by a magnetic switch in the belt.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
It was a lot of fun. I actually got to sit in J.J. Abrams' office and read the script for the film about a year before it came out. So,
oh, wow.
That's pretty rad, dude.
So I've got about 30 novels published at the moment. The last one that came out was Halo New Blood, which you may have heard of. And
some people told me I should read it.
That's what
Sounds familiar.
That's what I hear. I've heard some good things about it. I've heard people bitch about it too, but overall it's good stuff. So, but I live here in Beloit, Wisconsin, which is a town I grew up in. But I moved around for about 13 years. Came back when we had kids because again, free babysitting, and spend my days working on stuff to entertain people, and then my evenings are spent with my kids and my wife, hanging out and trying to raise them and get them to different soccer practices and track practices and things like that. So.
What, you mean the 4 12-year-olds aren't on the same team every time?
Sometimes. When they play softball in the summer, we're like, you're on the same team. That's it, right? But they don't all do the
They
same
probably have like
sports.
telepathic powers.
Don't I wish?
They're just
a
hive
coordinate
mind,
their
Krista.
efforts.
Like, they're actually just one person. Like,
That's right. I'd be able to say, could you tell your sister this? No, that doesn't work that way, sadly. It's all cell phones instead. And people forgetting them and forgetting to charge them. So that's what I do, and that's what I've been doing. I also work on computer games. I spent 3 weeks in Shanghai back in 2013 working on games for Ubisoft, and a couple of weeks in Singapore a couple of years before that. I've done stuff for Ubisoft and for
There wasn't a
High
Deus Ex
Voltage
game,
Studios
was it?
and a bunch of other stuff. What's that?
that's good. It wasn't Deus Ex or anything, that was it?
No,
that's
this
Square.
was that's Square Enix.
Ghost
Square
Recon
Enix? Oh, sorry.
Online is one of the games I worked on. And,
I've
yeah.
seen that, yeah.
yeah, and then some iPad games for them eventually as well. So.
Yeah.
Very good.
And a lot of other stuff that doesn't get released. That's the dirty secret of the computer game industry, is that about half the stuff that actually goes into production at one point or another never sees the light of day and is never even announced, right?
Sure.
Aw,
So you guys
that's
never even
sad.
hear about it. It's very sad when you hear that some people have been working in the industry for 8 years and have never shipped a title, right?
Right.
They've been paid, they got their benefits, they've been able to move up the chain, so to speak, but they've never actually had anything shipped. And that's kind of heartbreaking, because the
That
reason
must
you
be
get into
so
this is
weird.
to entertain people, right? If you're just there for the money, you'd be doing something else. You'd be managing a bank or whatever. But it does happen a lot of times that these games just get torpedoed. So I've got a number of games I worked on that, fortunately, I only worked on as a writer for a few weeks at a time. But some of the people that have been there working on modeling and artwork and coding and everything else, they got years of their life that nobody will ever see.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's also a symptom of what we were talking about before, where this industry is just so young.
Yeah.
You're going to see less and less of that over the years, and for better or for worse, I think that'll equate to, the industry being more competitive and probably more successful.
Let's hope. I mean, the problem is, I think we all want to see better management and we want to see better business practices. At the same time, that means you're becoming more corporate a lot of the time, right? So
you're hiring the people who don't have the passion and the love and stuff. So we're seeing now. I mean, Frank O'Connor is a great example of someone who went from a fan dedicated, part of the community to community facing and a service to the company and helping the conversation along as a community manager to now like he's the lead of the franchise and all that stuff. Like it's good to see people like him get the jobs that he gets.
No, I agree totally. It's fantastic stuff. And that's the way it should be. You want to have people that have the love for the whatever the universe is that you're working in. And I think again, when I do all these tie-in books and tie-in games, sometimes you have to figure out a way to love the property, whatever it happens to be. Now, for me, it was with Halo. It was fortunate I already loved it. Right?
That must have been super easy.
I had worked on Blood Bowl back in 1990 when I worked at Games Workshop. Right, I loved the game. The designer's one of my best buddies from back then.
Did you ever play the video game, the Blood Bowl video game?
I have played it a couple of times. By the time the video game came out, I was done writing all this stuff. Right, so I didn't have to actually.
Look, guys, it's all about Mutant League football. So
I love that game too. Actually, that was a lot of fun. That guy's rebooting it. He had a Kickstarter that failed, but he keeps trying to bring it back. So
that's coming back from the dead eventually. I think somebody will pick it up.
No, he's actually still developing it right now, even without the Kickstarter money.
I think he'll get help eventually. Someone's gonna make that happen. He's doing a Kickstarter. Got a lot of money. Yeah. He's like waving the flag himself. That's pretty cool.
He loves it. He created it himself. He wants to bring it back. So I can't wait to see.
So how did you get into writing? Like, were you a writer as a kid?
Yeah, I was
a writer. Just a lifelong thing?
No, when I was like in 4th grade, I won an essay contest and I got a prize for it. And I'm like, oh shit, people actually will value this. I could actually do this. There might be money in this. I can make a living at it.
I wrote this and got this. I can do this.
Exactly. So I went to college. I actually had I had a dual degree program. I wanted to be a writer, but my parents said, hey, you need to actually have a real job and have something you can fall back on.
I think parents say that no matter what the job that you want to do.
Well, unless you say, Mom,
I want to be a politician.
I want to be a brain surgeon. They say, okay, you go be a brain surgeon. It's all right. Because we know there's money in that. But so I had a degree program where I was going to get an electrical engineering, computer science degree, and a creative writing degree at the same time within 5 years. Right, at the University of Michigan.
Goodness.
Sounds easy enough.
I had it all approved by the deans of both colleges, and about 2 years into it, I realized that if I got that program finished, I was going to get a job in computer science at some point. And at the end of the day, I would say, I'm tired. Instead of writing, I'm going to go see my girlfriend or have a beer or play a game or whatever. And I would never get around to actually writing, which is what I really wanted to do. So I cut myself off from that part of the program, graduated in 3 years, and then started doing freelance game design for tabletop games and writing for tabletop games, which I got involved when I was a kid in southern Wisconsin because Gen Con was here. TSR, which created Dungeons & Dragons, was here like 40 minutes up the road from me. So after soccer practice, I would literally, when I was 16 years old, drive up to Delavan, Wisconsin and play test games with guys in the evening that were working for TSR and other companies. And so I started doing the tabletop game design. I fell into that pretty hard. And then eventually wanted to move into doing novels. But one of the tricks is that when you're writing full time during the day, the idea that you're going to spend your evenings and weekends to write a novel as well, you're already drained. You've used all your creative juices for the day, right? So I basically tried to backdoor my way in and eventually was successful. I got the guys over at Reaper Miniatures got me to write a novel for them for their combat assault vehicle, which is like a giant robot game. Yeah, which is tiny little miniatures, right? Like Battletech or Robotech, whatever.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was picturing.
Exactly. And then, so I wrote that book, and then I was able to take that to the guys over at Wizards of the Coast and Games Workshop and say, look, I got a book. And they're like, oh, let's sign you up to do a novel. because they didn't want to sign me on at first, because even though I'd written several million words of role-playing game and other board game stuff at the time for fiction and for rules, they said, well, we need to actually see you finish a novel, right? But
sure.
when I had that one, I was able to say, here we go. And they signed me up immediately to do novels for Games Workshop and for Wizards of the Coast. And
that
from there,
easy.
I just moved on.
So, you've talked about a lot of the projects that you've worked on, but you said you've always been a Halo fan. How did that relationship start?
It actually even goes back to before there was a Halo, right? I was
okay.
Back when I first moved back to Wisconsin, I was interviewing with different companies for doing little computer game work, and I got a call from Bob Settles, who was at Bungie at the time, and he invited me to come down to Chicago, where Bungie was before they got purchased by Microsoft.
Yeah.
And we were talking about working on, I think it was one of the Myth games back in the day.
Yes.
And I ended up not getting the job. I ended up going to John Tynes, who's now with Xbox and has been for years. I think he's in charge of some kind of educational initiative that goes global and does a great job of it. He was a producer for a while.
Fuck that guy, Matt. We don't need.
Yeah, no, he's an awesome friend of mine too. Like, I'm actually writing. He did a little RPG called Puppet Land that I'm writing a little adventure for, hopefully sometime this week. But so I didn't get the job. But Bob took me on a tour of the offices, and he brought me into this room where they're testing Halo essentially.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if it was named that at the time. But he's like, hey, look at this. There's
it was Blam.
There you go.
And it was a top-down RTS at the time.
Well, the stuff he had shown me was not top-down, actually. It was
like third person?
Yeah, it was third person.
Okay.
And but it was still fantastic. He's like saying, look at the dirt coming off the tires of that vehicle. It's different color depending on where it happens to be. If it's on grass, it goes green. Like, that's cool. Back in the day, that was actually an exciting advancement, apparently.
Hell yeah.
So ever since I saw that, and when the game came out, I saw Bungie got purchased. And I had been a big fan of Marathon before that, right? Playing it on the Mac. And so when Bungie got purchased, went to Microsoft, and the Xbox came out, the original one with Halo, I'm like, sign me up, right? I just played the hell out of that. I spent a lot of my days working on really strong narrative stuff, and I didn't want to do a computer role-playing game. I want to do a shoot the shit out of the bad guys game, and Halo hit that perfectly for me.
So, we have a few questions in here. So
sure.
These come from everywhere and go everywhere. So
yes.
So yes, and we're gonna try to blow through them so that we can actually talk about the story. When you got involved with 343, and we're assuming there is probably a combination of you had some ideas and they had a story that they might have wanted you to tell.
How does that process work? Where it's like, do they give you an outline of what they want, and then you just start writing, and then you go back and forth?
It can work that way. The way it worked with these guys is, originally I got the gig because I had worked on a Guild Wars novel with one of the guys at Simon & Schuster, Ed Schlesinger, who is now the editor of the Halo novels, right? And
nice.
When I saw that Simon & Schuster had gotten the license from Tor, who had it originally, I wrote Ed, and he says, "Oh God, I was just writing you. I was just putting your name on the list here of people I wanted to talk to about this." And I said, "Awesome, because I really want to do this." So I interviewed with the guys at 343. We did a phone interview, and they just want to kind of both sides get a feel for each other to see if you want to work with each other, right? Because the last thing you want to do is work with somebody that's going to be a pain in the ass the entire process on both sides. Seriously, it's just not worth your life to be able to spend. Even if this guy's a genius and you want to work with him, if it's going to be a pain every step of the way, it's not worth it. So we proved to each other that we liked each other. And then they said, okay, now we'd like to have you pitch us some ideas. And we like 3 to 5 of them and maybe a couple paragraphs on each, right? And here's a freebie for you just to get you started. We're interested in this kind of a thing right here. And then whatever else you want to come up with, please go ahead, right? So I wrote up, I think, 4 or 5 different ideas. And they one of them was the freebie they had softballed to me. And then they eventually picked a different one of the ones I had pitched originally, which was the sequel, essentially, to Halo 3 ODST, which is one of my favorite installments in the entire Halo series. So that was a big thrill for me.
Yeah. So was there anything that you were trying to do? I mean, this kind of gets inside baseball a little bit, but is there anything that you were trying to do that 343 was like, yeah, no, we'd like you to kind of steer it in this direction? Or
probably a lot of ways. But we had a really good working relationship. So it was mostly, what I try to do is not say, hey, I'm the genius and here's my idea and you should worship it, and then we're going to fight over details. I say, well, let's see what kind of story we can come up with together that we think is going to hit what you guys want to see in a story and what I want to tell in a story, right? Together. And so we had a lot of back and forth over that where I would say, well, what about this? And they'd say, well, no, maybe not quite. And then they would, the best thing about working with these guys is like Jeremy Patnaud over there. It was fantastic, right? And Tiffany O'Brien. Those are my two main contacts. But Jeremy would say, well, that's not quite working, but I think this is a great thing that we already have, but you don't have to use it. You can come up with your own solution if you want to. But here's a solution we're going to offer up to you. So it was never like, sometimes when you're writing with a team, it's like you're playing a game of Black Box, which was this old video game where you fired blindly into a box and tried to figure out what was inside of it by how it ricocheted off, right? And sometimes working with licensors like that feels like that because you really don't know what they want. You're just trying to guess. But I would say, well, what about this? And like, well, they would actually tell me, no, we really want it like this. We really love this part of that you've done. This detail needs to be changed to fit in with some of the lore that maybe you're not aware of yet. And here's the ways that we think we can improve it.
So you definitely thought from them like that they knew what they wanted, even if they didn't know how to get it from you. So it was kind of backwards and forwards.
They were interested in seeing what I came up with too. They weren't interested in dictating to me what I was going to write. If that was the case, they would have just handed me the outline, that freebie, and said, "Go, write this."
Right. Yeah. Was there any? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Was there any kind of Aaron, his other co-host, he was kind of dying to know. Was there any kind of resistance with some of the major kind of plot points that you put into this? Let's say,
none of the major plot points. But one of the reasons is
what
I do when I sit down and start a novel is I write an outline for it, right? And the outline is maybe just 2 or 3 sentences per chapter. And that tells, the neat thing about that is it tells people generally where I want to go with the story, right? And if they have any objections at that point, then we can start talking about changing things. And if they don't, then I just get to go ahead. And then we're just talking about fine details at that point. And I don't recall them having any huge arguments with me over any plot points at all, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but they had like no problem with killing off a character, like killing off a main character? Or
no, they actually gave me a list of people that I needed to keep and said anybody else was on the table to be killed.
Listen, guys.
Oh, wow.
This is
Why?
It's 343. It's Halo. People gonna die.
They didn't say that I had to kill them. They said that if you need to kill somebody, and obviously it's a story about a pretty horrific war, you're probably gonna have some death. These are characters that maybe might want to die at the end of this, and these are characters that we definitely have plans for. So please don't kill them off unless you got a really good reason, and we can come up with a solution for it. Right? Like obviously, Buck was somebody who was not going to be killed. Right?
Yeah, and the major kind of, let's say, the 2 kind of massive things that happens in this story for me are the death of the rookie and the end of Mickey's story. Was there any issue with that? Because that changes the lore.
Full spoiler mode.
Way to bring that up before getting to the
I know,
Club.
but I was
saying, we have to talk about it. I'm sorry.
They had no objections.
You killed the rookie. I was so upset. I was really.
How much shit have you got?
I wrote about how the rookie died. how the rookie was killed. I didn't actually personally put a gun to his head. No, I have a good friend of mine is Bob Salvatore, right, who wrote a bunch of the Drizzt novels for...
May have heard of him.
Yeah, for these guys over Wizards of the Coast. And for the Forgotten Realms. And he also wrote a Star Wars novel in which Chewbacca dies, right? And you would not believe the death threats he got for that. And it wasn't even his idea. That actually came down to him from George Lucas himself saying, we need to have a novel in which Chewbacca dies. We've chosen you to write the end of his life, right? And this happens. Every story has an ending. Every story, it comes to a peak at some point. And it's interesting and exciting to actually explore those ideas and see why and how they happen. So it's good to get to them. I understand how people have heartache over this. I mean, you develop some kind of an attachment to the character. You love the characters. I love the characters, right? But if you do it with respect and you do it well... Yeah.
I think we have extra. I think we have extra attachment to the rookie because we played him through ODS.
Right, but that's the interesting point, right?
You didn't. You played everybody. You played
everybody, but you were mostly the rookie. You were the rookie having flashbacks.
Yeah. Sure. But you played as Noble Six, and he dies at the end of Halo Reach, and who's going
that's
like,
true
no!
As well.
The character with like no personality is dead.
We all knew that Noble Six was going to die.
Well, that's just it. The rookie, I mean, if you had to choose somebody who's going to die in the story, the rookie literally has no backstory. There's nothing invested in him.
And he doesn't say anything.
Doesn't say anything throughout the entire thing. And you might have noticed that I carried that through the novel. He actually doesn't have a line in the novel.
I love that.
Because he just doesn't have a voice.
I remember, but he doesn't talk anything else.
Yeah, part of the thing.
But you gave him a face, though. You did give the rookie a face.
Well, I said he has a face.
Let's move on so we can.
Yeah, you give like a brief description.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
We have a question about getting into Buck's head, getting into Nathan Fillion's kind of like portrayal of this character. Did you have interaction with Nathan Fillion? Did you have any feedback from him?
No, I've never met Nathan. We have a lot of mutual friends. I have a lot of respect for him. I've seen a lot of stuff he's been in. He actually sat down and played in the Firefly role-playing game at Gen Con or Origins several years ago. When some friends of mine who had designed a game were running it. And he played Captain Mal. It just was fantastic fun.
That's awesome.
Seems to be a very egoless guy.
Did someone record that?
No, unfortunately not. We just had the stories about it, right? But my respect for him just skyrocketed when I found out he was willing to sit down. And nobody had invited him. He just showed up and said, "Hey, what you guys playing there?" And just joined in, right? And had a great time. Bruce Campbell did the same thing with Deadlands way back in the day. He played Briscoe County Jr. and came into a live-action role-playing game.
What?
Right? Back at Origins, like about 15 years ago. Just these guys are fantastic fun.
Campbell.
And it's neat to be able to play with their characters that they've developed. No, I never had any contact with Nathan. I don't know if they ever even asked him about doing the audiobook or anything like that. I suspect it was a matter of scheduling. If they could have been able to get him in, I'm sure they would have.
That's got to be a huge question. Everyone's got to be asking you that, have they?
Yeah. When we first started reading the book, I was like, if the audiobook isn't read by Nathan Fillion, somebody fucked up.
I suspect. Well, it's either money or time or a combination of both.
It is.
Right?
Yeah, it's always time's the biggest thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so I guess then, when you wrote this character, when you wrote Buck, because like we know Buck. When we learn about Buck in ODST, like it's just basically Nathan Fillion's like it's Mal and anything else he's ever done, like siphoned through the Halo world. Like this is basically like if Mal was in Halo. Like what if Mal was an ODST? Yeah. What if Captain Hammer was an ODST? Yeah. And less of a dick. So like, did you think about? Did you realize, like, okay, I'm expanding this character to his full potential, and then what did you do? Did you just like watch a bunch of Firefly, or did you did you try to think of this as, okay, no, he's not just this guy. I'm going to make him more of an ODST, feel more like he's in the Halo universe?
Well, I think you have to do both. I think you need to be able to take that character you've seen in other places and hear his voice in your head. One of the great compliments I've had from people about the book is that they actually hear Nathan's voice.
I absolutely hear Nathan's voice. Yeah,
and that means that I nailed the tone and the delivery pretty well, which I'm really happy about. But I think you also need to realize that he's not Captain Mal and he's not Captain Hammer or any other captain. He's Gunnery Sergeant Buck, right? And he's the guy. So I've never been in the military, but I have a lot of friends who are in the military. I've studied a lot about the military. So I wanted to bring that kind of realism to him from that point of view, that he's a soldier. He's a soldier first and foremost. And it often is about the band of brothers that you're working with. That's one of the reasons that he doesn't want to go on to become a Spartan at first. He declines it because he doesn't want to leave his buddies behind. Those are the most important things to have. And it's not until he has this very traumatic event that actually inspires him to bring the rest of his crew with him to become Spartan Force. And that, I thought, was one of the key parts of the plot, was that it really it hung around an element of his personality, around Buck's personality, about why he would want to move on to be a Spartan 4 or why he wouldn't want to move on, right? And it needed that inciting incident with the rookie to actually push him in that direction, to make him realize that, we really do need to step up our game here. And if we can manage to bring everybody who's still around with us, then we can do something really cool here.
Because that team's still going to get the same missions.
Yeah, they'll probably get better missions even. I mean, the stuff that they send the ODSTs on, as Buck says, they get to do the real work, while the Spartans often, especially before the Spartan 4 program,
get the glory.
Who get the glory ones, or the ones that were going to get the cameras or whatever else. They were the inspirational ones, as opposed to the guys who had to hold a beachhead or take this part over here. Often I'm
doing my part,
but they would often also get the parts that they brought the banner forward and had people rally around them, right? And the ODST guys are just there to do jobs. They're more like SEAL Team 6, where you don't even hear about it until they're done, right?
I thought you had a great line where book was describing the Spartan 2s, and he just called them like bullet magnets. That's what they were good for. They're just, you send them out and then they attract the gunfire, so the ODSTs survive.
Or how he described all the different classes of Spartans, like the Spartan 2s were gods.
Oh, that was brilliant. I love that.
The Spartan 3s were demigods.
Right.
Yeah, stuff like that. And you'd then alluding them to Greek mythology, the gods in Greek mythology.
Exactly, and that fits because they're Spartans, for God's sake, right? Yeah, it's all very Greco-Roman at the end of the day.
Yes.
So we have a couple questions from the community.
Sure.
And then we can actually talk about the book.
We have a weird community, by the way.
So our first question is, what does the Halo Bible smell like?
I actually practice this. Smells like victory.
Yeah.
That's my call out to the Apocalypse Now fans out there. So
Is that only in the morning?
yeah, only in the morning. It kind of smells a little bit like napalm too, apparently.
Yeah. Napalm sticks to kids.
No,
So
I've never actually seen a physical copy of the Halo Bible, if one exists. I assume one does.
sure.
My buddy Brandon Bourne was actually one of the guys who wrote the original Halo Bible back in the day with Eric Troutman. And I'm sure they had printouts, but all this stuff is done on computer nowadays. So they just send me,
Of course.
here's your FTP link, and here's a couple gigabytes worth of shit to digest, and go, right?
Oh, God.
Actually, they would send me to places online and say, hey, look, if you played through the game, that's great, and you know everything, but you may not need to check stuff. So
Here's a refresher course.
here's a refresher course. Here's a YouTube channel where somebody's recorded all the different cutscenes, right? So if you need to actually check details like this, you can do it instantaneously.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And God, that's got to be handy.
Oh, man.
As a writer.
Thank you to the fans out there who put all this together, honestly. Because, again,
Right.
I mean, that way I can tap that knowledge that the fans have actually built, that knowledge base they've built up, which is going to be more comprehensive than I could personally manage on my own.
So Chris Aiken wants to ask many questions, but
Sure.
his first question is, did any of your previous work have any influence in Halo New Blood?
I think all your work eventually influences what you're doing. It all leads up to what you're doing, and then what you're doing that day influences what you're doing later on. That's kind of a cheesy answer. Directly, I don't know that it did. I think part of it is whenever I do a new book, I want to challenge myself with something different because I want to not do the same things I've done before. So, for instance, doing this book in a first-person point of view that jumped around in time, essentially. Which,
oh man,
we're going to get to that.
Yeah, we're going to talk
which
about
is
that.
very much like the video game does. I thought that would be an interesting challenge for myself to see if I could pull that off. And so I think the fact that I had not done something like that before influenced me to try something different. But I also think that having gotten in other people's heads, having done licensed fiction before, having been able to work with characters that people care about, that all helped me have a lot of respect for what I was doing.
Right. Yeah, I think that definitely answers his question as far as like kind of knowing more about your history and the perspective that you brought to it. I mean, I think that definitely nails. I bet every Halo fan who reads this book is glad that you have gotten your feet wet with something like this in the past.
Yes.
As far as taking on a beloved franchise and all
not
that
my
stuff.
first rodeo, as they say, right?
Which is good. Yeah. Thank you for not fucking it up.
Well, no, I wrote this Guild Wars novel that I was talking about earlier for Ed Schlesinger.
Yeah.
And it was the first of the Guild Wars novels. And it was supposed to, they come to you this problem. They say, we have Guild Wars and we have Guild Wars 2, and there's 250 years separating them. And we want a grand adventure story that's going to cover 250 years of history.
The whole thing?
Yeah. You're
What
like,
the hell?
Exactly. So how do you do this? And this was
In
a
one book?
puzzle for me.
Or
In
a
one
series?
book, right? One
Oh,
book,
geez.
one novel. So what I did is I ripped off from one of the early English novels. I ripped off the Canterbury Tales. So as the heroes are going through this adventure in whatever the modern day is at that time, they are telling stories from their own past. And sometimes they're telling stories about the same incident, but from different perspectives, right?
Yeah.
So there would be these little interludes where they would tell stories as they were going along their way, along the main story thread to the end of the plot, right? And because I was able to do something like that with that editor, I think that's why he trusted me to try some of this other stuff in the Halo book.
So, he had some other questions that you basically have already touched on. But his last question was, would you take the chance of being a Spartan 4?
What's the chance? Is there a risk?
I guess because you have to, it's a gamble, right? You have to go through the
But the augmentations aren't as bad as like the Spartan 2 augmentations.
No,
still augmentations.
Spartan 4 is comparatively easy. Number one, they would never pick me because I'm just not suited for it, right? Number two, I got a wife and kids at home, so I'd worry about that. But
you could be the Frank Castle of the Spartan.
There we go. Yeah. If we're going crazier and something was to happen with my family, or they were off on their own, or I'd outlived everybody, or whatever, or the kids are all off in college and don't care about dad anymore, and my wife has left me, then sure, my consolation prize would be a Spartan 4, right? But I actually think if you're a soldier and you have the opportunity to become a Spartan 4, I mean, you're essentially becoming immortal, but you're also mortgaging your life to your employers forever, right? Nobody gets drummed out of the Spartan Corps, right? They put too much money and time and effort into you to be able to do this.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, just like in that story that Krysta and I always refer to, the mutated Spartan that like.
Oh, I always forget what that one's called.
I want to call it Odd One Out, and I know that that's from Halo Legends.
It's not.
The one we don't like.
It's the Halo Evolutions thing where it talks about one of the Spartans 2s that didn't go through the program.
He basically becomes like a freak of nature.
Yeah. Poor thing.
It's not Pariah, is it?
Who fails out because he gets crippled by his stuff, right?
Yeah, I think it is.
Oh, it is Pariah.
It's
Pariah.
Pariah.
Yeah, Pariah.
It's handy when I have the book right here.
There you go.
That is handy. So, without alluding to anything that you might be working on, because I don't want to do that to you.
That I'm not allowed to talk about.
Tell us all your secrets.
Nick asks, if you could tackle any other character in the Halo universe, who would you like to write?
Well, yeah. Of course, I'd love to write the Master Chief, right? That's the great fun character. That's the one we all love and care about. One of the reasons I didn't try to do that here, and it wasn't even asked to, is because with Halo 5 in development, a lot of that stuff's in flux right now, right?
Sure.
And it becomes very difficult to write stuff. If you notice, a lot of the Halo books in the recent past have been about the past in Halo, not about the future in Halo, right? Because the future is still being developed. And obviously 343 doesn't want to be tied down to anything, and I don't want to step on their toes anyway. But I'd love to be able to do more stuff with the Master Chief and move on from there. I think Veronica Dare would be a lot of fun to write from to do some Oni missions with her, right?
I'd love to see a spy novel, like James Bond, Veronica Dare. That'd be awesome.
Exactly. No, there's a lot of room there. Those are probably my two favorite characters. Halsey's been done to death. I think she's a great character, but she's had lots of potential already focused on her. But yeah, I'd probably go with Dare and the Chief.
Cool. All right. So before we move off the dossier and actually get into the Halo Book Club proper, my question, which has nothing to do with the book, what's your favorite Halo experience? So we've made it. I guess you made it clear that ODST is your favorite game.
Yeah.
But what about it? Or if you're gonna be like, no, actually, Halo 2 is my favorite game, or something like that. Like, what is your favorite thing in Halo? My favorite game was the original Halo. Actually, I mean, it just why is that?
Because it was all fresh and new then. Because
it's the right answer.
The reveal of the flood. Yeah, it's a great game, and so it's the building block for everything else, right? And that's when you get to know the Master Chief. That's when you get to know Cortana. That's when you get to know the entire universe. Seeing the Halo for the first time, fighting the flood, all the other big reveals. It's just great stuff all the way through. It's got great drama all the way through it. Halo 3, as far as looking back, Halo 3 ODST is one of my favorites because it's just so different from everything else, right? It gives you a different viewpoint. And honestly, when I want to write things, I'd rather write about Batman than Superman, right? I'd rather write about the character who's got real challenges in front of him, as opposed to how do I shove the sun in this direction, right? You want to, stuff that just is incomprehensible for us mere mortals. I'd rather write about the guy who actually goes to the bar and gets beat up occasionally or whatever, and has real life issues, or at least has a threat of death hanging about them. So for me, ODST did that. I thought that was a great installment in the whole series.
Awesome.
Favorite book?
I was just about that. You mentioned before that you love Cold Protocol.
Other than New Blood, which is of course brilliant.
Yeah, and Fall of Reach is obviously again, the one that everybody goes to, right? The Cold Protocol I really enjoyed too. Part of the reason that is because Tobias Buckell is a good buddy of mine, right? So that was one of the first Halo novels I read because he's like.
So you like your buddy's books? That's how this goes. Matt?
Honestly, when you do this stuff, when you become a professional writer, you have lots and lots of books thrown at you. Sometimes they're saying, could you do a blurb for this book? Could you, recommend this book or whatever? Or maybe you just want to push your friend's novel, but you don't want to do it without knowing that it's good, right? So you end up reading a lot of your friends' novels as opposed to just whatever gets thrown in front of your way. For the Halo stuff, again, Fall of Reach is just the classic upon which everything else is built, right? That's the backstory that you don't even get in the games until later on in a lot of cases. But and
most of it you don't get in the games, unfortunately.
Exactly. And but with the Cole Protocol, that I just like hearing Toby's voice in that. I really enjoyed the stuff he did for. He's got a series. It's the Xenomorph series, I think is what it's called, and it starts out with Crystal
Not
Rain.
to be confused with Alien.
Yeah, exactly. No, Xenowealth. That's it, Xenowealth. And the first one's called Crystal Rain. It's a Caribbean-influenced science fiction story, right? And he was raised in the Caribbean, just on a boat, literally in the Caribbean.
That
and
sounds so cool.
It's just great to see that kind of perspective come through and to hear his voice again in a Halo book. So that was a lot of fun. For instance, I'm really looking forward to seeing Troy Denning's novel coming out because Troy has written a ton of Star Wars novels, but Troy was actually one of the guys earlier when I talked about going up to Delavan and playtesting games in the evening. Troy was one of the guys who invited me up. Troy's was a mentor of mine when I was a teenager. So to be able to see him and his take on Halo, I can't wait to see it.
Which book is his one?
Oh, it's one of the new ones coming out. They just announced it.
Yeah.
There's like 5 of them, though.
Yeah.
It's called Halo Last Light. And it's due out sometime this year.
Awesome. All right. Well, why don't we get into the Halo Book Club proper?
Okay.
And so we can wrap the show. I want to get what we usually do is like first take. David, what's your overall impression of Halo New Blood? No pressure.
No pressure. Okay. Since I'm going first,
right.
I will say thank you very much for an awesome book. You didn't fuck it up.
Good. That's always
I love reading digital and print media, so it's not a fake book to me. It's just as important as all the other books out there. So don't mind Krysta. She likes to shit on people. It was a really thrilling read that every chapter got me more into it, and then when you started to deviate, I was like, oh my god, I want to read this bit to get to the next bit, and there's another story, then I have to, oh god, I got to read this bit to get back to that story, and then it just spirals, and then it was just it was so full of information. It was fantastic. Backstory of a main character that we didn't know. You covered, you had so many people in there, you had links to different characters who had never met each other before. June and Buck have a great scene in the bar.
Yes.
And then you have one of I'd say the only romance kind of scenes in a Halo novel or a Halo media that we've kind of seen, which is on the balcony with
except for Contact Harvest.
That wasn't romance. That was just a bang. That's different, Krysta. Okay. Matt put effort into this.
No, David, you have a good point. That's one of the few things that I actually have read, and I was just thoroughly loving the back and forth just immediately between them.
Their relationship is very unique and it's very different, and I really enjoy two career soldiers. They know themselves. They're not going to kind of settle down with a family, but they're dancing around the fact of what are we going to do. And, she tells him, "Win me this war, and we'll sort it out." He wins the war, and they don't sort it out.
Another war happens.
And now, and then they're both looking at each other, thinking, "We didn't really think we'd get to this point. Now, what do we do?" So, that was kind of great to read about that. And then, obviously, killing off the rookie, I was like, I didn't really care too much about him until he's dead, and then when he's dead, I'm like, oh my god, I can't play the rookie anymore.
ODS 2 isn't going to have the
ODS
rookie.
ODS 2 is never going to happen now.
ODS 2.
So, that was kind of awesome. And then, obviously, the massive ending with, Mickey and, an actual traitor Spartan. I can't wait to see how that plays out. So,
thank you. Yeah. I really enjoyed working that part. A lot of people have asked me about the traitor bit, and that's actually the new thing when you go through Halo 4 and on with the new franchise moving forward, is you're not just fighting against aliens. You're not just blowing up aliens. I mean, there actually are humans fighting against each other nowadays, right? And after having had 30 or 40 years of war,
as it was before the aliens showed up,
it's going to change things. Your mission is not as clear as it once was, right? Defending the entire human race and saving them is one thing, but now that you have rebels that you're fighting against, they're going to be sent out against, especially as ODST. The Halo guys, the Spartans, they're going to go off and fight the aliens because that's what they're best at, right? But the ODST guys are going to be thrown into the worst parts a lot of the time.
Yeah. So, Krysta, what's your overall take of New Blood?
like David was saying, I really like the tone of the novel where it feels very it feels like you're in his mind, where people are telling you a story and they just go off on a tangent and then a tangent, another tangent, and eventually get back, and it's like it felt very natural. And also Halo New Blood is like where all of the lost characters of Halo just show up. It's like, oh, there's Joan. Oh, look, there's Virgil. They're all coming back. It's like a reunion.
It's great, right? It's great to, I mean, that's what I've been loving about Escalation. Escalation is just like, hey, here's everybody that's still alive.
Yeah.
Like, here's every character and characters that you didn't know were still alive. And, like, all that stuff. It's really cool to get, as a fan, and as especially we're big fans of the lore, to get just this wealth of stuff happening right now.
But not big enough of a fan to actually read a book.
There's a lot to digest.
Listen, guys.
It's okay.
Just, like, imagine me, I'm in a wheelchair, but I went to Hawaii. I didn't go surfing. I'm sorry. I'm in a wheelchair, right? It's hard. It's not impossible, but it's really hard.
Cop-out. You can't just make that analogy. That's so dumb. You have the ability to read. You just chose not to.
So, Drew, when you read on the Kindle app, it tells you how many hours you have in the book. What did it say?
Infinity.
No.
I was like too slow. Cannot compute.
It fits in spurts. Anyways, I think I would have to agree with Krysta. My big take right now is just like the first person point of view is just spot on. We've talked about the fact that it really does. You just hear Nathan Fillion's voice. You feel Buck as a character telling you this story that you're like trapped with him at a bar, and you're like, okay, man, okay. No, you didn't. No, you haven't mentioned that.
Can you go back? Can you go back to the?
I know, right?
The other.
Did I ever tell you about the time I met Veronica? No, you haven't.
And then there was a gun at my head. Did I ever tell you about Veronica?
Yeah, but to tell you how this happens, I got to tell you this other story. Is how it works.
Yeah, and that whole thing is so well done, and it does. I really like the fact that you brought up that it's essentially the sequel, right?
Yeah, it is ODST, dude.
And it should be thought of as a sequel to ODST in that you're jumping from place to place like you did in ODST. And honestly, that might even make it make more sense, and I might flow along better with it now, just thinking of it that way instead of just the first 3 chapters. I was like, well, wait, dude, no, I don't. No, come on. Like, I really felt like I was listening to a story that I was like, dude, get back to what you were saying. No, because what happened?
The beacon is near.
It's so well done. It's so well done.
Teasing it just a little bit. That's all.
Did you did you write it like that, or did you write them in blocks and then into Spartan?
No, I wrote it like that actually. I even outlined it like that. My editor occasionally was going, "Are you sure this is going to work?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Let's figure it out." If I have to put it all back together in the linear order, I could do that. But I look at Buck. Buck's like a guy with ADD in a sense. He just jumps around. He knows what he wants to talk about, but he doesn't have it all come out of his mouth in the straight order, right? He's not a historian. Right. He's a guy you're talking to in the bar, and he says, "Oh yeah, but you need to know this, right?"
You have great lines in there where he doesn't apologize for what he's done, but he's aware of what he's doing.
He's
kind of saying, "Tough luck, I'm doing this. This is how I work. Bear with me."
He's like, "Oh, here's another tangent."
No, some of that was my editor saying, "I think you need to signal to people what you're doing here." I'm like, "Okay, that's fine." But as you say, it's reminiscent of ODST where it jumps around like that. And I just wanted to kind of capture some of that just metaphorically. But I thought it was fun to be able to say, okay, we got to this point, but here, in order to really understand and appreciate that, you need to know this part, right? It's almost like being on the internet and saying, okay, now to be able to figure out what this is, I'm going to click this link. Like go on to Halopedia or whatever and just go down the rabbit hole, right?
Until
you get to the bottom. And then you come back up and see how that actually influences how you think and feel about the stuff that's happening in the present.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to ask your kind of take on the other characters. What was your, I guess, what were you thinking going into telling a story about ODSTs and Alpha 9 when you know that like the rest of Alpha 9 doesn't exactly have that much flesh on the bones there, except for Helljumper. I don't know if you've read Helljumper.
Oh yeah, definitely read Helljumper.
So yeah.
Okay.
Now there's a number of references in the book to the stuff that they come up with in Helljumper. So.
Okay. Yeah.
You've got Gretchen in there as well and stuff.
Exactly. For instance, right? Well, I thought it was when you're doing tie-in fiction, a lot of times you're dealing with established characters like that, and those guys are already set, and you get to flesh them out a little bit, but there's not a whole lot you can do with them other than make them more of who they are, right? And when you have a character like Dutch or even Mickey or whoever who hasn't had a whole lot said about them, that gives you a lot more of a open canvas on which to work. And I think it allows you a lot more room. I mean, people were surprised that Mickey ends up being a traitor at the book, but there was actually an online series of video interviews that they did when the people were being inducted into Alpha 9 way back when. And at one point, Buck is interviewing Mickey, and he's talking about how, what about your parents? Weren't they terrorists on Luna way back in the day? And I'm like, oh, this is perfect. It just fits in perfectly, right? And I had already made him a terrorist at this point. I already made him the traitor. And I'm like,
it just so happens he has the background for it. That's
exactly.
Yeah.
One of the guys, actually, Chris, we've talked about a lot. He actually, Chris had actually linked to us all those interviews in the lead up to the release of your book. So It was actually really interesting. Like, it was all new to me, hearing all those interviews of like all the characters and backstory that they'd done prior to even ODST, which I wasn't aware of when the game came out. But I think that's brilliant the way you've tied in those characters together. You created a backstory that was already there. You had that character built. You had it down. You know what I mean? You knew who he was, and they knew who he was all the way back when ODST first came out.
Exactly. I think, and it gives me a little bit of cover when people say, "Mickey, no!" And I'm like, no, look back. You can see it's there. It wasn't even me. Somebody else did that part, right?
That's who Mickey is. Yeah.
Exactly. But I thought it was just a lot of fun to be able to play with that, and it's such a rich and diverse and wild multimedia background that we have for this stuff. It's not just comics and video games and novels, but little bits like these interstitial bits they do for the video. Even the Hunt the Truth thing that's going on nowadays, that'll be fodder for something else in the future. Those little videos that are being done, or the podcasts that are being done, and they're just building out this incredible universe. And as a creator in the universe, it behooves us to tap into as much of that as we can without making it seem like the universe is really only about these 6 people or whatever, right? One of the things we did in the book, actually, Jeremy would often say, well, yeah, you have this planet here, but we've already seen this planet a few times. Can we come up with another area, right? Just to try to give it a bigger sense of being this massive galaxy that we're playing in, as opposed to, like in Star Wars, every time they go to Tatooine, for God's sake, you're like, okay, we're back to Tatooine. Obviously the most important planet in the galaxy.
Hey guys, remember that one song? I gotta say, I've said this many times on the show, but with you here, I gotta tell you, that is my number one favorite thing about Halo. Is it feels like a franchise like Super Mario or Tomb Raider or even Uncharted, where it's about Master Chief, but it's not. It's not even slightly just about Master Chief.
Yeah.
Like when
the amount of content, it's totally like overweight the amount of stuff that isn't about him than the stuff that is about him.
When to relate it to, like, I don't know why my brain went here, to relate it to like going to a concert or like a festival, like the headliner is the headliner, but all of the other bands are like the best bands ever. So, I mean, you're still seeing you're getting all of these other flavors. And that's what I love about Halo, is it so much is a Star Wars and a Star Trek. And like when you read about Halo historically, or through like documentaries and stuff like that, they always go back to whoever the hell it was. I can't remember who it was, but an early quote from someone that said, like, basically Halo is like, it's on the level of Star Wars and Star Trek as far as like it's rabid fan base. It's such a wide open universe. And that's why I've stuck with it my whole life, is I've picked this. Like people growing up, you pick one, right? You love Lord of the Rings, or you love Star Wars, or why not both, or whatever. But there's always that one, and Halo's been that for me, because you just see all the potential. You just see miles and miles of galaxy, and just being like, what's next? What could happen next? And I think as far as video games go, the only other thing that's come close in modern times would be Mass Effect.
Yeah.
And they've done an amazing job of just like, here's a whole history of this species. And you're just like, Jesus. And I mean history, like written, the whole thing. And I love that Halo is especially this year, as we've said, is getting so much more fleshed out stories and focus on all the different characters, right?
No, it's fantastic. I think there's my kids' generation, essentially, they look at Halo and, they didn't grow up with Star Wars, right? They didn't grow up with Star Trek, that stuff from previous generations, right?
Yeah.
And for a long time there, I was like, this is actually the defining science fiction of this generation. Halo really is it in a lot of ways.
I think so. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's going to color whatever else comes after it. And it's obviously been colored by the things before, but it is that defining property for that generation in a lot of ways.
And so this is what I always say about the franchise is that it's informed by Star Wars, Star Trek, Starship Troopers, Aliens, like Predator, all that stuff. It's informed by all that, but then also the people who run it get to look at what went wrong or what might not have worked out with having a Star Wars Christmas special and having like and all of the like horrible, just beaten into the ground Star Trek movies. There's like 60 Star Trek movies or something like that. They get to look at these franchises, and Alien is the best. Like for one of the greatest science fiction movies of all time, and then one of the best sequels of all time, and then like to see the rest of that franchise just like go through the rough patches that it's gone through. They get to look at that 343.
It's okay, Drew. They're bringing it back. Neil Blomkamp is going to make it all happen.
Oh, it's going to be great, I'm sure. Yeah, Prometheus was a great example of. So, they get to learn from all that, and I hope that our generation appreciates what Halo has learned from Star Trek and Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica and all that stuff. And I just really hope we get higher and higher quality stuff. And honestly, this book is a great direction. I love that you tried something different, and it worked, but it also somehow was familiar because it is a first person novel that like jumps around from perspectives and stuff like that. Like I love that.
ODST originally was supposed to be kind of this noirish story, right? Like Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett, The Thin Man, or Trouble Is My Business. These old stories from like the 20s and 30s. You can tell that by the way it's dark, it's done at night a lot of the time. It's this neon lighting, it's raining going on.
And the music. Yeah.
Right, and the music, right? So it's really meant to be that kind of a story. And that's all those stories are really told from the first, not all of them, but most of them are told from the first person point of view. It's and so I actually tapped into those. I love the writers from that era. Again, Hammett and Chandler, etc. Just some fantastic stuff. So I was drawing upon that tradition too when I wrote the novel and try to get into Nathan or Buck's head that way. So.
Nathan's head, yeah.
Exactly. Well, that's just it, because you also have I had his voice rattling around my head for about 6 months. Right? So,
yeah.
But it really is Buck. It's Buck more than it is Nathan, but it's Nathan's voice.
A couple more questions, and then we need to wrap the show because
sure,
we've had you far too long.
This has been a hearty show, and we really do appreciate your time.
Thank you.
My last question would be, what's your favorite part of this book?
Oh, that's a hard question to answer.
Or some of your favorite parts to write, I guess, to be fair.
You can tell Drew anything, really, because he hasn't read it, so he won't actually know it's not in the book.
You can tell him the part where Master Chief swoops down.
I like the part where Groot and the Ents from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, they get together and they do that dance off. Yeah, that's awesome. Right, to the Elvish tunes. One interesting thing about this book that I don't think I've told anybody before is that my original draft was they wanted me to do a 40 to 60,000 word book because it was going to be a short book, right? And the original draft was only 40,000 words. And the second draft, because they came back and said, no, we want more of this. We want more of this. We want more of this, was 60,000 words. So it jumped like half again as much, right? So I really got to go back through. And the first draft through was just this gun, go, 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 plot, 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 plot. And the second draft through, I got to actually add a lot more flesh into the bones. I think my favorite scene in the whole thing that is not tremendously dramatic is when Buck and June are in the bar talking to each other, and they just have this really human moment when they're talking about what it's like to be a soldier and what it means to be a Spartan, and what does duty mean both to your government and to your fellow soldiers that you've been with, right? And that really stuck with me. I had one guy call out a bit in the office over at 343 about where Buck is talking about when he gets back to Draco 3, where he's from, and he talks about how he recognizes the way the sun dances on his skin, right? And I had just done this as a little throwaway line. He just thought that was perfect. And looking back at it, I'm like, yeah, it's interesting to actually try to get in somebody's head that's actually been to dozens of different different solar systems, dozens of different,
right?
Even more planets, places that
and
we'll
how
never
all the
go
suns are different.
Yeah, exactly. How it all feels different. The gravity's slightly off, the sun is slightly off, the air is slightly off, right? And what it means to come home, and how does that actually permeate you like that? So
almost like getting in different cars. Like you've owned a lot of different cars in your life, and you're like, I remember getting in this one car. Like it always bumped my head on this one thing.
Exactly.
And,
or when you go back to your childhood home or wherever you grew up, and just the smells bring you back, right? Or if you're even going through a supermarket, and a smell will bring you back to when you were 6 years old and you had that bread that your mom gave you, or that kind of candy that your dad handed you, right?
Yeah.
And it just throws you right back, and to have that kind of sensation. And to realize I had tapped that without even thinking about it, just because I was having fun with the character, that was kind of cool. But I think those moments when Buck comes home, and that leads up to the moment in the bar, actually, when he's talking to June about the future. So you have that nostalgia for the past that's hitting him hard in the heart at that moment, and then talking about what the future will bring for him and for his friends. And I think that's a really neat moment.
Any other final questions, guys?
I have
David,
one
what's
more.
on your mind?
Yeah, I have one more that I'm actually dying to ask you. You have a great analogy imagery in there about the fishing pole that carries out through the beginning and end, which was one of my favorites. Drew, you probably didn't follow all this through, right?
No clue what you're talking about.
Right. So it starts off with telling us about Buck and how he kind of grew up, where he started on his home planet, where he was a fisher. Essentially, his family were his uncle. Don't know the whole family, but they're fishermen, and they're going out. And he has this favorite fishing pole that his uncle had, and he's had it for years. But slowly over time, he's replaced different parts of it. So actually, in the end, none of the remaining parts of his favorite pole are actually of the original. Is it still the same pole? And you have a great way of tying that into his unit, Alpha 9, where if all the members of the team are switched out, is it still the same team? And even more important, when he becomes a Spartan, it's like when they switch out his body parts and they augment him and they change him. Is he still the same person? And I love that morality that you kind of have, this questioning, that he's constantly questioning himself. Is he the same guy? I guess I wanted to ask you about that. Like, how do you feel? Are they the same person? Is that kind of, how does that?
It's an interesting question. I don't know the answer. Actually, I learned about this when I was in college way back. I had a professor named Eric Rabkin, who was teaching us science fiction and fantasy in college, right? And he talked, this is the study of
you can go to college for science fiction and fantasy.
In fact, I was a course assistant. This is back in like 87 or so, right? 88. So a long time ago. And I'm sure there are more colleges doing this nowadays, but Eric was pretty advanced in the field at the time. But he was teaching us about ontology, which is the study of the nature of things, right? And he had an example of that. He says, this farmer comes up and says, this is my axe. This is my favorite axe. It's been in my family for generations. I've replaced the head 3 times and the handle twice. Right? And none of that is the original thing, but to him, it's still the same axe. And what does that mean to you? What does that mean to you as a person? I even look at Star Trek, for instance, and, they have the teleporters in Star Trek, right? And I call those those are actually murder clone machines, right?
Oh,
they kill somebody at one end and put a clone on the other end. Are they actually the same person? Or are you killed?
The physical atoms are the same,
right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that addressed in Star Trek a little bit as well?
It is, actually. There's one point where Riker gets supposedly reflected back, and he has a transport twin, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, if that's the case, and if you got these guys, and you could actually just make hundreds, if not millions, of copies of people. Let's say we have the best soldier ever. We can just duplicate them all the way out, right?
A million Master Chiefs.
Exactly. My first original novel I wrote was a book called Immortals. It was published by Angry Robot. And it's about a guy who's, it's in a world where you can actually have your brain backed up and then restored into a clone body if you've been killed, right?
That is such a crazy concept. I love that.
Yeah.
It is super cool.
The neat thing about it is the hero of the story is the world's oldest man because he was the Secret Service agent who saved the president, sacrificed his life but he was not quite brain dead, so they're able to put him into a clone body. And 150 years in the future, he has been murdered again and hasn't backed himself up for 3 months, and now has to go off and solve his own murder, right?
Well, that's
in
cool.
addition to all the other stuff, which is kind of wacky nuts. But so that kind of question has been, it's been tickling the back of my brain for a long time. Are we the same people? I mean, we all shed skin cells. We all grow. Are you the same person you were when you were 6 years old?
When it comes to Halo, I think the looming tie-in to that question, right, is if we get Cortana back, will she be Cortana?
Right, exactly. And the AIs
you laugh,
are made
but
out of
I'm
people.
serious.
The AIs are actually made out of people. They're made out of brain patterns they take from people who are dying, right? So Cortana is actually made out of a clone of Catherine Halsey. And
That's right. She's the first one to be like that.
Exactly. Right. And a lot of the newer AIs are similarly that way. They're just the smart AIs are essentially mental clones or computerized clones of people. And are they the same person? Or are they even close to the same person? Or is it just a facade that's so sophisticated we can't tell the difference?
And then another reflection of that is 343 Guilty Spark. Like, is he is he the same person, or is he kind of not really the same anymore? No, that's a really good question, David, and that's a really good point. I love that. I love the way, just listening to the way that you describe it, like the way that applies to Buck on so many different levels.
Yeah.
It's just something that the other Spartans would never question because they were brought up that way, as opposed to now you have a unique, fully formed adult with opinions and a life experience.
And he suddenly changed dramatically.
Questioning.
Yes.
And I remember you've written in that he was really happy to hear Romeo still chatting up women, that he was still the same person, that's how he confirmed to himself.
Even though he's a pain
Romeo's still the same. Yeah, that he's still the same.
And that's part of the end of the book where Musa is this is the success of the Spartan 4 program, that we've taken people that are adults, that actually have opinions, that will maybe not follow orders specifically every time or do exactly what's expected of them, and do the human thing instead. And that's actually a valuable thing. And I think that's a nice way that's my take on the Spartan 4s and why I like them so much.
That's definitely a spin on the Spartan 2s because they're kind of the other way around.
Exactly.
So, Krysta, do you have any other questions before we wrap things up?
No, I think we covered everything.
Yeah.
That I wanted to talk about. Great book. Loved it.
Yes. Matt, was there anything you wanted to kind of throw out there before we go?
No, just thank you to everybody for reading the book. Thank you for the fans for not abusing me too badly, for killing off or betraying some of their favorite characters. Mostly people, I've had a couple of people who are just like, why? But everybody's been very respectful and understanding and enjoying the book, and I really appreciate that. And thank you for having me and letting me be a part of this great thing that Bungie and 343 have built. It's just been an amazing experience.
You're in there now, and you've read the book. You're in the Halo canon now.
Exactly. Oh my God.
You can't go anywhere.
There's no leaving the Halo.
They have you.
It's a great
we have your Skype number now.
Exactly.
I want to remind everybody, Podcast Evolve is part of the Rated M Gaming Network. Go to r8dmgaming.com to learn more. Check out r8dmgaming.com/aboutevolved to get links to all of our stuff. We're on iTunes. We're on. We did some YouTube stuff back in the day. Sometimes we use our Twitch channel on accident, and you can join us on Facebook. We have a really active Facebook community, but you can also hit us up and join the community over at Halo Archive and their forums. So check out haloarchive.com as well. Matt, you have a pretty active Twitter handle, so you want to throw that out there real quick?
Sure, it's M Forbeck, MFORBECK, and I'm on Twitter probably a lot more than I should be. And if you want to know more about me and what I'm doing, you can always go to forbeck.com.
Awesome. All right, well, with that, we will see you guys next week. Thank you, everybody, and evolved.
Evolved.
Oh.